Welcome everyone back to weekly weather updates, and in today's video we're going to have a look at the latest from the live radar, run through the UKV, have a look at the precipitation and the temperature over the next 5 days. It's remaining fairly cool, if not quite cold in places, with quite harsh overnight frosts as we are stuck under higher pressure for the foreseeable future. However, further northwards and westwards we could see incursions of lower pressure bring perhaps some more cloud and rain at times, but it shouldn't be too widespread and should be limited where it does occur. But of course we'll have a look at that in a minute. We'll then, in the second half of the video, look at the longer range, look at the GFS, GEM, ECMWF and the ensembles, as high pressure looks to continue to be the main theme over the course of the next couple of weeks. There are some signs it could move northwards, pull in easterly winds, it could move further southwards, or even further westwards as well, allowing lower pressure to dominate once again. But at least for the next week to perhaps even 10 days, doesn't look any sign really of too much of a pattern change. If you are enjoying the drier, sunnier weather today, that does look likely to be the main theme for many areas for the foreseeable future. So yeah, really quite decent for early February. So, do remember, if you enjoy my videos, make sure you like and subscribe. And remember to follow me on Twitter as well, the link's in the description. So, if we do start on the live radar, you can see pretty dry over the UK at the moment. The British Isles in general, completely dry really. Few areas of precipitation off the far north of Scotland, but nothing too much. And it's because we've got this real big area of high pressure over the top of us. Around 1,048 millibars, I think, and that is some of the strongest high pressure we've ever seen in some areas through early February. So yeah, very, very strong area of higher pressure. I even saw some interesting facts that the pressure is high enough out there that even water at the surface, it takes 101 degrees to boil now, which, yeah, very, very interesting to see those sort of subtle changes that we do get with rising pressure. So again, if you are boiling your kettle today, it may take slightly longer, probably only a few seconds longer, but slightly longer than usual. The high pressure will stick around, but this strength of high pressure will probably reduce down to around 1,030, 1,040 millibars for many through the rest of this week. So not quite as high a pressure, but still relatively high. You can see further eastwards some weather fronts out here, and it being snow on its eastern edge and rain on its western edge. And this is where we've got a big area of low pressure parked out in Central and Eastern Europe. And this is where all the cold air is that we thought could flood our way this upcoming week, from what a lot of the GFS charts were showing earlier this week, pulling in potentially easterly winds. And this is where all the cold air is. You can see it's not too far away, maybe 1,000 miles or so, but again, poised to our east. Now, if you put on the temperatures around 11 a.m, you can see that more distinctly. For the UK at the moment, it's not particularly cold, but it's not particularly mild either. A lot of blues and yellows mixing in. Indicative temperatures around average for the time of year, sort of 5 to 7 degrees, but it'll be a lot colder overnight, with temperatures dropping below freezing, as we'll see on the UKV in a minute. But as you can see further eastwards, this big block of very cold air that is trying to push its way eastwards, but it's not really going to be doing that. It's going to remain through Europe, really, and it's just going to get halted by the big high pressure that is parking over northwest Europe at the moment. So if you do put on the UKV and have a look at the precipitation and the temperature over the course of the next 5 days, you can see fairly dry through today, nothing much going on, and that continues tonight. And wherever we have clearer skies through central areas, maybe some fog patches further southwards and eastwards, we could see some quite harsh overnight frosts in places. Into tomorrow, again, fairly dry, maybe a bit more cloud around, but again, nothing too much. Into Tuesday, as I said, incursions of slightly more unsettled conditions, some weather fronts pushing in there, but again, getting pushed away, squeezed away by the higher pressure. Into Tuesday afternoon, look at that, again, very dry, and that continues all the way into Wednesday as well. We do see, temporarily in the north and west, a weather front push in, but it gets squeezed away and it heads further southwards. It does completely disintegrate, really, in just an area of cloud. Wintry showers follow in the north, but again, still fairly dry. As we're towards the end of the week, it could be a little bit more uncertainty as we do see low pressure trying to come up against the high, but it is still generally dry. And you look at the mean sea level pressure, we are still generally under high pressure at day 5, but you can see just low pressure trying to push in. And again, these sort of things will be deciphered over the course of the next couple of days. And we'll just have to see what happens. Very subtle shifts in positioning of low pressure and weather fronts will decide which areas see cloud and that lighter rain. But for most areas, it should remain dry for most of this week. If you look at the temperatures though, it is going to be pretty chilly. This afternoon, temperatures widely around that 5 to 7 degree mark. Could be slightly higher in places, could be slightly lower. But as I said, overnight tonight, those temperatures will drop away quite rapidly, down to sort of -1 to -3 degrees perhaps, or even lower in a few spots for sunrise tomorrow. But by tomorrow afternoon, again, 5 to 7 degrees, quite widely average for the time of year. Again, as we progress into Tuesday, again, an overnight frost for many areas further southwards and eastwards, for most of England and Wales, really, under that big block of higher pressure, with generally cool upper air temperatures, but nothing ridiculously cold. As we head into Tuesday afternoon, again, remaining fairly chilly, temperatures, again, around that 5 to 7 degree mark, maybe 8 or 9 in a few spots, and again, overnight frost into Wednesday, once again, maybe -2 to -5 degrees there. Through Wednesday afternoon, again, pretty chilly, 5 to 7 degrees. And then into Thursday, we can see slight deviations in temperatures overnight, sort of a wedge of milder air there under that thicker cloud and the weather front. But again, very temporary and moving through quite quickly. Into Thursday afternoon again, 5 to 8 degrees, not too bad. And then into Friday, we have some thicker cloud further southwards and westwards, and that will hold the temperatures up. But further northwards and eastwards, where we have clearer skies, it will be pretty cold. Down to -1 to -4 degrees once again. So you can see the clear theme here that is going to be relatively around average in terms of temperatures over the course of the next 5 days in the day, but overnight it will very much be dependent on the cloud amounts. Wherever we see the thicker cloud, it will hold those temperatures a few degrees above freezing. Wherever we see clearer skies, allowing that radiation to escape and the surface to cool down, temperatures will drop well below freezing and it will be pretty cold and frosty out there. So good idea to keep an eye on the clouds. And of course, it is going to be very difficult to forecast that because cloud amounts can change very quickly at very short notice. We could also see some issues with fog patches this week as well. But again, we'll have a look at those in nearer time when they do occur because they can crop up very quickly. If we do now have a look at the longer range, go over to the GFS and see what that is showing over the course of the next couple of weeks. Again, high pressure over the top of us. We do see some strain later this week with low pressure coming in from the north and west, but high pressure quickly replaces it by the weekend. In the longer term, though, it does look likely high pressure will continue to dominate in the south, but we will see low pressure incursions further northwards more rapidly and more often. You can see there a brief northerly wind perhaps in around day 10. Again, wouldn't take that with too much certainty simply because it is so far out in the time frame and all the way to the end of the run. You can see there are signs that high pressure tries to head northwards, but it doesn't really come off, and instead we see a battle against a high pressure system up towards Scandinavia and big low pressure system in from the west, and we stay in that sort of milder wedge of air with bitterly cold air towards Central and Eastern Europe and bitterly cold air towards Greenland and northeast Canada heading out into the Atlantic. So again, a bit of a confusing signal in the longer term, but not really deviating all too much from what we have at the moment. Not really going stormy or very unsettled, potentially trying to push that high pressure further northwards, but no definitive signal at this stage. If we do have a look at the EGM, see how that does compare over the course of the next 10 days. Again, high pressure over the top of us stays very much in control. Low pressure incursion later this week, and we stay under high pressure all the way to the end of this upcoming week. However, towards day 10, a bit more of a signal for low pressure to push in here. This would go very unsettled and potentially quite stormy from the GM. And again, northwesterly wind would be pretty chilly as well. You can look at the upper air temperatures. We'll be tracking the -5 line in. Again, nothing ridiculously cold yet, but it could go a little bit chillier there with those upper air temperatures. But again, nothing amazingly cold. It could just be quite gusty out there, unsettled, and perhaps a little bit stormy. But different to the GFS, which did keep that high pressure more in control towards day 10. If we do look at the ECMWF, see how that does compare. Again, high pressure over the top of us continues to dominate all the way to the end of this working week, especially in the south, more incursions of low pressure and weather fronts in the north. As we head towards day 10, very much on the line of the GM, bringing quite a big area of low pressure sat over the top of us and to our north, with quite a stormy, unsettled theme here. And you can see the small low developing on the jet stream. This would whip around the southern edge of that mother low and could give quite some quite interesting conditions in the south there, with quite a deep area of low pressure. So again, this could produce quite a stormy spell in 10 days' time. But again, it is 10 days away, so it's huge uncertainty. And as we'll see in the ensembles in a minute, high pressure still is largely favoured. And you can see generally cool upper air temperatures, nothing amazingly cold, nothing amazingly mild. If you do finish by looking at the ensemble members, looking at the latest GFS, they haven't fully come out for the 6 o'clock run, but they've come out for the next sort of 12 or 13 days, sort of the reliable time frame and beyond. And you can see generally they are average, do slightly above average, but with low precipitation and generally temperatures, and then generally clearer skies and higher pressure, we will be seeing an inversion at the surface, and that's why the temperatures towards the surface will actually be average to below average in general. Again, if we look at those 2 metre dew points, they are cold, down towards freezing or lower, again showing us a dry continental air mass, allowing those temperatures to fall. And you look at the 2 metre temperatures over the next week, not getting much above 6 or 7 degrees, and down towards freezing overnight. Again, the ensemble members do struggle with overnight temperatures. Again, these were what we'd see if this was just a raw air mass, but of course, radiation, we have to take radiation into effect in terms of the air, in terms of the warmth escaping the ground when we have clearer skies, and that's not what the GFS ensembles do take into account. So that's why it does get a lot colder than these ensembles do say. Again, if we look at the sea level pressure, again, very high for the foreseeable future, a bit of dropping there in around 10 days' time, but I must say that it is still pretty uncertain exactly what will happen in the longer range. Of course, the GM and the ECMWF both went quite stormy in the longer term, but you can see a majority still keep us generally above average in terms of pressure, giving us higher pressure overall. If you look at the ECMWF ensemble members, generally average to above average, but again, for similar reasons to the GFS ensemble members, it will be average to potentially below average at the surface. Definitely around the 15th of Feb, there is an increased signal of unsettled weather, so it could turn stormy mid-month, maybe more unsettled, but again, that is still speculation, and we're only seeing this from a couple of the operational runs and some of these ensemble members, as if you look at the sea level pressure, definitely dipping back down, potentially towards the low pressure range, but it is in 10 days' time, so things can rapidly change. So we'll have to see what happens, but there could be a trend here of more unsettled stormy weather appearing for the mid-month. But of course, it'll probably all change by tomorrow, and we'll just have to keep our eyes on it. So anyway, thanks for watching. Make sure you enjoy the high pressure around over the next few days. It's going to be quite pleasant. Yes, chilly at times, but relatively pleasant with a lot of sunshine about. So make sure you go out and enjoy it, because we still can see quite dire weather for the next couple of months as we head slowly into spring and eventually summer. So yes, even though it is early February and it's not your typical time of the year where it's nice and sunny and nice to get out, who knows what's going to be coming up in March and April, especially as we saw in yesterday's video. There's the potential for quite a major sudden stratospheric warming coming up in the next couple of weeks that could delay the onset of spring into March and April. So we'll have to see what happens with that. That could mean that spells of weather like this, where it's not insanely mild, but it is pretty sunny and dry, are going to be quite rare, potentially, in the longer term. So make sure you go out and enjoy it over the next week or so. So anyway, thanks for watching. Hope you enjoyed. Subscribe if you're new, and I'll see you again for another video soon.